And ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased. When I say pleased, we're actually ecstatic to be with you today. Today, we're going to have an announcement about something near and dear to me. When I say near and dear to me, I actually mean near and dear to me. In other words, historic Cheyney University. And I wish that I could kind of turn my camera around so you can see my Cheyney State College large emblem that I have on the wall. But if I try to do that, I'll probably knock it off. But trust me, it's a really, really nice Cheyney State College emblem. Now, you heard me say Cheyney State College, but you've often heard about Cheyney University. We're going to get into the history of the school that started out as the African Institute. And that's really interesting because many people think that the school started out as the Institute for Colored Youth. It did not. It actually started out as the African Institute and then became the Institute for Colored Youth. And then there were a number of name changes most recently. In 1983, we became Cheyney University. And in the next, at exactly 3:45, that's 6 minutes from now, I'm going to introduce to you two very important persons in connection with the history of Cheyney State College / Cheyney University. By the way, I graduated in 1982. 1982 was the last class for Cheyney State College. Then in 1983, it became Cheyney University. We'll talk a lot more about that. As you can see, depending on how good your vision is, I have three of my Cheyney pins. I have two on this side. One is the CUNA, the Cheyney University National Alumni Association. The other is the Life Membership pin. And then this is the President's pin. So I'm doing my Cheyney thing today. And you might wonder, hey, why is he doing the Cheyney thing today? Didn't Cheyney just last month on February 25 have an important anniversary date? The answer is yes. Cheyney did on February 25. That's February 25, have a very important date in its history. And that was Founders Day. Cheyney was founded February 25, 1837, which means this past Friday, it was exactly, I repeat, exactly 185 years ago since the birth of historic Cheyney State College / Cheyney University. Time now is 3:40 p.m. In 5 minutes. I'm going to bring my guest in. Let me just say a little bit about them. I'm going to talk a little about Cheyney's history. Well, let me reflip it. Let me talk a little about Cheyney's history. And then at exactly 3:45 in 4 minutes, I'll introduce to you our two special guests. And they'll tell you exactly why we're talking about Cheyney today. Because again, last week was Founders Day. Last week was the 185th anniversary of our birth. Let me just say this. Cheyney is the first HBCU. But I want everybody who's listening to get a pen and a pad because there are 4 first HBCUs. People say, well, how could there be 4? Trust me, there are 4. And it goes like this. And I'm saying this so people can appreciate exactly what we mean when we say Cheyney is the first HBCU. And it goes down like this. Cheyney was founded in 1837. It's the first Black institution of higher learning in America. Now, if you wanted to become a teacher in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you didn't have to graduate from a 4-year college, but you had to graduate with a certificate, a teaching certificate. And when I say you had to graduate with a teaching certificate, I don't mean some easy to study for certificate. This required people to take exams in rigorous fields such as calculus and geometry and algebra and chemistry and science and mechanical engineering and agricultural engineering and English literature. And not only that, did these Institute for Colored Youth, African Institute students in the 1830s have to take those exams. Many of those exams were in Latin, not in English. I mean, it's hard enough to take an exam in all those subjects in English, but you have to take many of them in Latin. It gets even more difficult. Many of these exams were public exams. In other words, you had oral exams in auditoriums, and the public can come and see you go through your exam. Think about that. That's the history, the academic, the intellectual history of Cheyney. That's why we say Cheyney is the first HBCU, having been founded in 1837 as the first, I repeat, the first Black institution of higher learning in America, because to become a teacher in Pennsylvania, you had to get a certificate. And to get that certificate, you had to go through these grueling academic courses. That's where Cheyney comes in. So Cheyney is a first. There are three more firsts. Lincoln University, my beloved Lincoln University. In fact, all HBCUs are beloved to me. Lincoln University is also the first. Why? It was founded in 1854 as the first Black degree granting institution. So if you wanted a BS or a BA, you could get that from Lincoln University, 1854, the first Black degree granting institution. That's also number one. And by the way, we're going to get to our guest in just a couple minutes. There's also another number one, Wilberforce University. Wilberforce University is in Ohio. That was founded 2 years after Lincoln in 1856, but that's also a first. Why? Because Wilberforce, founded in 1856 in Ohio, was the first completely Black owned and operated degree granting institution. No disrespect to Cheyney, of course not. No disrespect to Lincoln, which started out as Ashman Institute, but it was white folks in the midst. And I got to admit, they were good white folks, but there were white folks in the mix at Cheyney and at Lincoln. But Wilberforce in 1856 in Ohio, it was an all Black thing. It was the first Black degree granting. When I say first Black, I mean first completely Black owned and completely Black operated degree granting institution in America. That's Wilberforce in 1856. That's why that's also a first. And there's another first, Shaw University. Shaw University was founded in 1865 in North Carolina. That was the first Black degree granting institution in America's blatantly and brutally racist Deep South. Can you imagine being in the belly of the beast, being in the Deep South and starting an HBCU? That's what the great Shaw University is. So that's why I say that Cheyney is first, Lincoln is first, Wilberforce is first, and Shaw is first. And there are about 103 other HBCUs, all great institutions. And before we get to our guests, because they're going to do most of the talk, let me just say this. I love HBCUs because they are the future of academic excellence and professionalism. Why do I say that? 80% of today's Black judges graduated from HBCUs, 80%. 70% of Black dentists in America graduated from HBCUs. 70% of Black physicians, that's medical doctors, graduated from HBCUs. 60% of Black engineering degree holders graduated from HBCUs. 50% of Black lawyers, including yours truly, graduated from HBCUs. 50% of Black teachers in America graduated from HBCUs. 40% of Black engineers and Black health professionals and STEM degree holders, you guessed it, graduated from HBCUs, and 40% of the Black members of Congress graduated from HBCUs. And what's interesting is that these schools constitute less than 3% of all the country's colleges and universities. Think about that. HBCUs constitute only 3% of all the colleges and universities in America, and still they produce these judges and these dentists and these physicians and these lawyers and these engineers. That's why I love HBCUs, in particular, Cheyney State College / Cheyney University. Without further ado, you're now going to see on the screen Deb Walker. That's the Deb Walker. If you know anything about Cheyney basketball and going to the first, I repeat, listen to what I say here, the first NCAA Division I women's championship basketball game, you guessed it, Cheyney State College Lady Wolves. And you're looking at a young lady who was instrumental in making history at historic Cheyney. She's going to talk about the whole Cheyney State College thing and Cheyney University thing. We're going to get into that. But you actually, I wish you could reach out to her so you can get her autograph, because when I say, I really mean that. Think about this, folks. Cheyney, little Cheyney at the time had about 5,000 students playing against universities with 20,000 students, 25,000 students. And little Cheyney was so great with Deb Walker and the others she's going to mention that they didn't play Division II basketball. That would have been unfair. They played Division I, and she's going to break that down. And speaking of breaking things down, Kyle Adams. You might know him as Coach K or Coach Kyle. Deb and I and the rest of us call him the walking college basketball encyclopedia. You know, I like to think I'm the smartest guy in the room when I go to meetings, but every time I hear Deb and Kyle talk, I just shut my mouth up and pick my pen up. And that's why I know the little bit that I know. And we were hoping that we could have Leroy McCarthy with us. He's unavailable today, but he's also instrumental in doing what we're trying to do. So let me start off with you, Coach, first, and then I want to spend much of the time with Deb. Kyle, why are we here today? What's the big deal?
First, Michael, thank you. Thank you for all that you do for our beloved Cheyney University. We definitely want you to know how much we appreciate all that you do for Cheyney, for the HBCU landscape, just our entire community. Mike, we appreciate and thank you. Deb, it's always good to see you, sis.
Always.
We sit this year, 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the 1982 Cheyney State College Lady Wolves basketball program, making history and playing in the very first NCAA Division I women's basketball national championship game. What's really historic about what those women did in 1982 is that since that year, 1982, there has never been another historically Black college to ascend to the national championship game in the Division I ranks of the NCAA.
In fact, Coach, I want you to stop right there because you're going to rattle off more stats about how great it is. And I got my pen and pad out, and I'm encouraging other folks to do that because Kyle's going to break it down. But I got to go. You talk about the great women of the 1982 basketball team, and our producer extraordinaire, Roland, showed the photo of the players. We got to go straight to Deb Walker right now. And Deb, I wasn't joking when I said I wish the folks could reach out to you and get your autograph because, as Kyle just explained, this was history. Deb, tell us what role you played. Well, let me just pose the question to you that I posed to Kyle, and I'm going to ask you in two parts. One, what's the big deal about this upcoming event? And I just want you to rattle off some of the names of the players. So first, what's the big deal? What's coming up? And two, who are the players on that team?
The big deal is 40 years ago, we all were at Cheyney State College. Me and my teammates, I can name them all. Lena Dabney, who's no longer with us, but her memory lives forever.
In fact, Deb, let's do this. I'm going to ask our producer to put the image up again so we can see the players, and you'll just identify each one of them.
Okay, going from right to left on my end, you have Coach Stringer, you have Sandra Giddings, Paulette Bigelow, Lena Dabney, Karen Drawn, Rosetta Guilford, myself, Yolanda Laney, Ann Strong, I can't see who's next to Ann, Sharon Taylor, Faith Wilds, and Paulette Bigelow. Val Walker. Okay, thank you, Kyle.
Yep.
So 40 years ago, we started out on a journey not to do anything but be the best people, first of all, and the best basketball team in the country. We took we didn't take any rejections. As much as we went through off of the basketball court, we should have never been there. So they say. But little did they know that inside of us was our determination to shock the world.
Yes.
So losing was never an option. It was all about.
In fact, let me just chime in, but I want you to do most of the talking because you talked about this team that many people thought shouldn't be there. I mean, we're talking about a team that had an unheard of 23-game winning streak that included victories over powerhouses, Division I national powerhouses like North Carolina State University, Kansas State University, University of Maryland, and Auburn. Deb, how did Cheyney compete against these powerhouses, and how did Cheyney win?
Because we had a chip on our shoulder, because we would travel and people would say, Where's Cheyenne State at? Never heard of them. What do you guys do? Why are you here? You know, so the chip was, no matter how big you were, we were coming to knock you down. And all the big universities walking into certain arenas, and you had a packed house of, say, 10,000 people rooting against you, the racism, the name calling, the referees. But what held us together was the spirit of Cheyney. And that was from our student body, from our administrators, our professors. Everyone on campus was behind us. So we knew that we could not let you guys down. So to go into Cope Hall, the most hostile environment that I know of in basketball. They can talk about the Dukies down at Duke. They can talk about the people at North Carolina. There was nothing like the Cope Hall fans. There was nothing. So we were just determined to be champions. So going into that Final Four, we knew we were going to win. We were not just there to be there or to play. We were going to win. And the worst feeling in the world was not losing the game, but knowing that we let our fans down, knowing we let our school down, knowing that everybody who cheered for us, we felt as though we let them down. But what turned that around was that bus ride back from Norfolk.
Woo.
And when that bus turned the corner on Creek Road, I believe it is, Creek and Cheyney Road.
Yep.
And to see, I'm saying that there were 2,000 students on campus, to see 1,999 students out there waiting on us.
You know, see, Deb, that's what I want you to talk about. I want you to tell some of those war stories of the bus coming back on campus and how the students went crazy. But hold up for a second, Deb. I want to turn it over to Kyle. And Kyle, ask you, was this 1982 team a flash in the pan, a one-shot deal? What's up with that?
No, it was not. And for people who may not know, Coach Stringer started coaching at Cheyney in 1972. And throughout her tenure at Cheyney, the women's basketball program was a power. I know that in the mid-'70s, they had an undefeated season. There were always very talented women's basketball teams at Cheyney. Deb will tell you that 82 is more of a culmination of all those different teams. When I've being around the team from 82, whenever they talk about their accomplishments, they talk about the foundation that was set in those teams prior to 1982. So no, it was not just a flash in the pan. For people who don't know, Cheyney played in the first Division I NCAA national championship game in 1982. They returned to the Final Four in 1984. So they played that Cheyney, small, historically black Cheyney, close to 4,000 students, played in 2 NCAA Division I Final Fours. And, you know, when you look at the landscape of college sports, and Deb talked about, you know, the challenges that they face as a small financially challenged HBCU, for those women to ascend to the heights of college basketball supremacy when they were playing against teams in schools who had 3 to 4 times their enrollment is just amazing. It's trailblazing. It's Hall of Fame worthy. It's documentary worthy. So, you know, for us to be here to really celebrate the accomplishments of what those women have done, especially in this day and time, Michael, where there's a resurgence of attention and support for our historically black colleges and their value to our country. I think it's extremely important that we acknowledge and celebrate the Cheyney State Lady Wolves and what
So,
they
Coach
do.
Kyle, are you suggesting that Cheyney students today who weren't even born at that time should care about this?
No question, Mike. No question. When you look at the media and how so many media platforms like to share the negatives of what may be going on at historically Black colleges and in schools like Cheyney State. You know, for our young people who are at the university now to have a connection to their heritage and know that, you know, that they walk on hallowed grounds, that people that came before them, that walked these same halls, that played basketball in this same Cope Hall gymnasium, that there was greatness here and that there's greatness in them. So I think it's extremely important and vital for our current students, not just at Cheyney, but throughout the whole HBCU landscape, for them to know the history of the Lady Wolves.
You hit it right in the head, Coach. I mean, what you said is perfect. If they knew about the greatness of Cheyney as an HBCU, they wouldn't just be proud about their school, they'd be arrogant about it. And I'm not just talking about greatness among HBCUs. I'm talking about greatness when you consider predominantly white institutions. Cheyney, just great. Coach K, I want you to talk more about the dynasty and some of the other teams, but I got to give the microphone back to Deb Walker. Deb, something is coming up in a few weeks on March 26th in connection with the 40th anniversary of the March 28th, 1982. And Deb, before you tell us what's coming up, let me just explain to folks that Deb Walker is a member of the 1982 Lady Wolves team and a 1982 graduate of Cheyney State College / Cheyney University. She's also the event official spokesperson of this event that she's going to talk about. And the gentleman that you heard just a minute ago was Coach Kyle Adams. From 2011 to 2016, he was the Lady Wolves coach, and he's a 1999 graduate of Cheyney. He also is an official event spokesperson of this 40th anniversary event. Deb, what is this event? Where is it taking place? What time? Tell us more.
Okay. Before I tell you that, let me go back to to talk about what Kyle was talking about, the 82 and the 84 team going to
Deb, this is your thing. This is your show. You tell me and Kyle what you want to talk about. You were the one that made history. Okay. You were the one that went to the championship. We just sitting here following your lead, and I really mean that, Deb. I mean that with all sincerity. So whatever you want to talk about, that's what we're talking about. The microphone is yours.
Thank you, Mike. So we talked about 82. We talked about 84. We talked about the shoulders that we stand on, which were women who came before us, which laid that foundation. But in 83, we can say we went to 2 Final Fours. We should have went to 3 Final Fours. And I'm going to make this brief. In 83, we were the #1 seed in the East. The #1 seed, which means you have home court advantage throughout that tournament. For some reason, the #1 seed, Cheyney State College, was sent to Penn State. And I'll leave it at that.
Wow. And so, nobody explained what that was about?
Nobody explained what that was about. There was no answer. Unfortunately, Kyle's favorite people, the referees, took over the game at the end and sent us home. Big fiasco in the locker room. State police were called in.
Whoa.
And one thing I know for sure, the 3 most powerful women that I've known, 3 of the most powerful women I've known, Coach Stringer, Coach Schaefer, and Coach Hill, had our backs. No matter what happened in that locker room, they had our backs. So,
well, Deb, I don't want you to tell us all the gory details. I've heard rumors about what took place, but tell us a little bit more. What was, just tell us as much as you feel comfortable sharing.
I'll tell you after the game, there were some comments made by the Penn State fans, by a Penn State player. So I plead guilty. I went in the locker room and I did something. And yes. the state police came in to get me. And Coach Hill told them, leave her alone. Leave her alone.
Wow.
Leave her alone.
And see, Deb, these are the kind of stories we need to know about, but please continue.
So what people don't realize about the 82 run was that Coach Stringer was not with us for half of the season. Her daughter had just gotten sick, and they had just figured everything out. So she was sending like motivational notes to us before each game. And I can remember 83, but I could go back to 82 with Penn State coming to Cheyney. And her letter simply said, "You're invited to a war, but nobody invites you to a war in the Wolves' Den." Penn State came into Cheyney thinking that they were going to beat us. And we were down by 10 at halftime. The first time in my career, I know we were down by any points at halftime. So we're down by 10 at halftime. We go into the classroom and we have our little halftime speech, Coach Schaefer and Coach Hill, rah. And we come out and the football team sits in their far right-hand corner by the door. And they had this chant going that just, you know how the football team is, the Wolfpack was wild, college students, crazy. They had a chant, and I'll never forget this chant. It said, "Cheyney State superstars, show these blank girls who you are."
Yes.
And they screamed that so loud, I think
Yes.
it went on like a 14-zip run coming out the gate. And we never looked back. So it was so important to have that home cooking sometime when you're defeated, but never defeated. So,
Deb, your storytelling is so great. We were supposed to have you and Kyle here until 4:15, but I got to keep y'all to the end of the show. So you both are going to be here until 4:29. Deb, if you want to finish talking about that, you can. But before I switch the microphone to Kyle, tell us a little bit about what's coming up on March 26th.
So on March 26th at 2 o'clock in the historic Cope Hall on the campus of Cheyney University, we're going to celebrate her story. And the story is the 1982 NCAA Division I finalist, Cheyney State College. We're going to come in and celebrate us. It's us celebrating us because they don't want to celebrate us. They act like they don't know what happened. But as I said, and as we say, Mike, history cannot be erased.
Yes. I love that phrase you came up with in one of our early meetings. History cannot be erased. We're going to talk more about that event coming up on March 26th of 2022 at Cheyney University in Cope Hall at 2 p.m. We'll get into more details later. Let me quickly switch gears. And before I switch from Deb, I got to tell you, Deb, I was a student at the time Cheyney was doing its thing. And I got to tell you, the women's games, Deb, were boring. And they were boring because you all would beat the other team by football scores. It would be like 48-0. I'm like, who takes a 48-0 lead and winds up winning the game by 62 points? So it was never a question for the students as to whether you all were going to win. It was a question of how much. And Kyle, I want to keep it in that vein. Explain how Cheyney State College, this small HBCU, was Division I in women's basketball. It wasn't Temple. It wasn't Penn. It wasn't Drexel. How do you explain that?
So with the fact that they were so competitive, and so what you have to recognize, in 1982, we're 10 years removed from the start of Title IX. So the women's game was still growing. The Cheyney State teams were so strong, they would play in the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference for their conference, but then they would play the Division I national schedule because they were that good. I think it's important for Deb. You know, Deb talked about 83. 83 is extremely important because, one, yes, they were sent to play at Penn State as a 1 seed. That does not happen. 1 seeds host.
Kyle, have you heard why that happened? We know why, but what was the explanation?
From what I was told, because Penn State held more, the building was bigger and it could have held more people.
Okay.
But when you look at it in the lens of, they didn't in 1982, they did not expect small historically black Cheyney State College to be in their first national championship game. And if those ladies, as a 1 seed in the East, would have returned to the Final Four in 83, And then in 84, you'd have Cheyney State College as a 3-time Final Four participant, as a historically Black college. When we talk about what those women did in 82 and 84, I say it again. There has been no other historically Black college, men or women's basketball team, to reach the heights that these women had. Not just one Final Four, but 2.
Kyle, that's so important, Kyle. You got to repeat that so people know you didn't misspeak.
The first and only historically Black college and university, men or women's basketball team, to play in a Division I national championship game or Final Four. Not 1, but 2.
Wow. Let's quickly go back to Deb. We're going to, thanks to both of our guests today. And as I mentioned at the outset, Deborah Walker is a member of the 1982 Lady Wolves team and a 1982 graduate of Cheyney. She's also the 40th anniversary event official spokesperson. And the gentleman you just heard, Kyle Adams, aka the Walking Basketball Encyclopedia, was the coach of the Lady Wolves from 2011 to 2016 and a 1999 graduate of Cheyney. He's also a 40th anniversary event official spokesperson. Deb, did you all realize how great you all were at the time you were winning? Did you know you were going to be great? Did it surprise you? Tell me what was going on in your head. I know you were confident, but did you realize that you would be dominant?
We knew that we would be dominant, and I think our hardest battles were in practice.
Deb, let me ask you about that. Is it true that you all practiced against the men's team?
Yes, we did. The first, again, another Cheyney first. The first college university to have the men and women practice together. And there was no let up. The guys weren't nice to us at all. They were not nice. They were who they were. We ran the same plays. We played the same defense, the same offense.
And by the way, we're talking about the Division II national champions.
Yes.
Okay.
So they pushed us to become better. Coach Cheyney was not easy on us. Coach Stringer was not easy on them. We took whatever they gave us. I know some days that we would outshine the guys, and Coach would light them up. It was like the comedy show / the classroom. The gym was his sanctuary. He gave a lesson every day. You may have got tired of hearing him talk, but he never misled us. He or Coach Stringer always knew what they were doing. So it made us better. It made us greater. And we knew if we could beat the guys on certain things, that we were fine. So if you're going against a guy, say George Milton, who's like, 6'10"?
Yes.
If you're playing George Milton, and George Milton is not letting down on you because he don't want to run. If he gets outdone, he's going to run. Or he's going to get that paddle. And he does not want that. Now, without telling, I'm going to tell a couple days, Michael Blackshear's in there. Michael Blackshear got taken out by some women. And the only thing you heard in that weight room was that paddle. And coach, coach. And Mike came out, he started running. So that was one of the factors that made us great, was playing against the men and having the knowledge of 2 Naismith Hall of Famers, Coach Stringer and Coach John Cheyney, rest in peace, Coach. They made the difference in us. And
in fact, Deb, I want you to talk about these 2 coaches and how great they were. And I'm probably going to make a mistake here because we talked about the men's 1978 championship team. I might have said 82 earlier, but the men's 1978 national champions. And I'm going to name some that I have here, and I'm probably going to forget 1 or 2 names. There's Jeffrey White Mouse Hutcherson. There's Kenny Cisco Kid Henson, Arthur Sugar Bear Stone, Roger Bird Laseth, Andrew Dip Fields, Gilbert Gil Saunders, Gerald Mo Mills, Charles Murphy, and Dwayne Coleman. If I forgot anybody, I apologize. Before we shift gears and go back to the Walking Encyclopedia, Coach Adams, Deb, talk a little bit about these coaches. Were they just okay coaches? Were they just good coaches? How far did they go in getting recognition?
They were great coaches. They were great coaches because they knew the game. Crazy story. I'm in Copal, we're getting ready for practice. And I walked by Coach Stringer's office, and she's reading this book on basketball. So I said, damn, coach, I thought you wrote the book. That's how much she knew. And she looked at me kind of puzzled, but I was so serious and so sincere about it because they knew it was about X's and O's on the court, but it was more so about X's and O's in real life. And that has carried us a long way. They both received their flowers. Coach Cheyney was inducted into the Naismith.
Yes.
Coach Stringer is in the Women's Hall of Fame as well as the Naismith. They deserve that. They both deserve that. They worked their butt off. They were doing what Deion Sanders is doing right now for HBCUs. Without the recognition, without the money, they did it.
And I'm glad you mentioned Deion. Deb, do you see this, what we're trying to do? And those who are listening, we're talking about the 40th anniversary of the historic 1982 NCAA basketball Division I national, not regional, not local, but national championship game featuring Pennsylvania Conference champions and national finalist Cheyney State College Lady Wolves. Deb, I got so much I want to ask you, but I want to make sure we get some more time for Coach Kyle. And what I'm going to ask Coach Kyle to do right now, and Deb, when I come back to you, instead of me just asking you questions, you both know so much about Cheyney's basketball and Cheyney history. What information, Kyle, I give you 5 minutes. What information do you think is critical for people to know? And before we do that, folks who want more information about this 40th anniversary event, jot this down. Saturday, March 26, 2:00 p.m., Cheyney University, Cope Hall. We're going to put out flyers very soon, but if folks have any questions, they can email me at michaelcordx@gmail.com. That's MichaelCoard, the letter X, michaelcordx@gmail.com. Thanks to our producer, Roland. You see it up there and say, hey, Mike, I saw Deb, I saw Kyle, and I saw you. I want more information about this event that's going to take place on Saturday, March 26, 2022, 2 p.m., Cheyney University, Cope Hall, 40th anniversary event. And obviously, the actual date of the 40th anniversary is that Monday, March 28th, but we're doing it on the weekend in the hope that we get a lot of folks. But again, we need you to email us more information, michaelcordx@gmail.com, because it's probably going to be an Eventbrite thing because we don't know how many people are interested in attending. Want to make sure we have a list. Coach Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next 7 minutes or so. What do people need to know?
I think it's just so much there, Mike. When you look at that team, you start with the women that played on that team. There were women from all over the country and region, some of the top players in the country who were recruited by some of the top basketball programs in the country.
Why did they choose Cheyney?
When you speak to those, when you ask those women, and we did a podcast series with those women on my podcast, the It's Bigger Than the Ball podcast. When they talk about
it, down, Coach, you got to repeat that. Folks need to hear what you just said so they can tune in.
We did a podcast series entitled Historical Hidden Figures. When we got the ladies of the 82, 84, and 76 teams. When those women from 82 talk about why they chose Cheyney, they say Coach C. Vivian Stringer. They were compelled to come to Cheyney to play for Coach Stringer, but also because of the synergy that they had with each other playing out on the AAU circuit. A lot of the women already knew each other from playing against each other in high school on the national circuit. So when you look at that team, you start to think about first, Valerie Walker from New Jersey.
Call out the names.
Valerie Walker was the first woman from a historically black college and university to make the Kodak All-American team, which is the top team in the country for women's basketball players. She not only made the team in 1981, she made it in 82. You have Yolanda Laney, who also made the Kodak All-American team in 1984. Cheyney University is the only historically black college men or women's basketball program to have two, not one, but two people make the national All-American team, right? So you start to talk about that. Val Walker finished third in voting for the Wade Trophy, which is the top award given to the best player in women's basketball that season. So when you start to look at that team and what they accomplished, you go forward to 82. You look at who they beat on their run. You talk about North Carolina State of the Atlantic Coast Conference. You talk about Kansas State of the Big Eight at the time, which is the Big 12 Conference. You know, you talk about the University of Maryland, which is in the Atlantic Coast Conference. They played Louisiana Tech. They played these institutions who are parts of these mega conferences today and were the same back then. For those women to make that run. But I think that the other thing that's really important as we come out of Black History Month and we are now sitting in Women's History Month, Michael, that Cheyney State women's team that went to the 82 championship game was coached by the only and first all women's coaching staff. Coach Vivian Stringer was the head coach. She was assisted by Coach Carlotta Bunny Schaefer and Coach Ann Hill.
And let me say this, Coach, this is the third time I'm asking you to repeat stuff because what you're saying sounds so unbelievable. I think some people think you misspoke. Please repeat that.
Cheyney, the 82 team was coached and led through a national tournament in 1982 by three women, three Black women. Hall of Fame coach C. Vivian Stringer was assisted by Carlotta Schaefer and Ann Hill. There has never, in over the past 40 years, there has never been another group of Black women who've led a team to the national championship game. There's never. That is a first, Mike. That is a first. And they remain the only group coaching staff of Black women to lead a team to the Final Four or national championship game. So when we talk about all these firsts, for a long time, that team had Cheyney had the record for largest margin of victory in the NCAA tournament. Deb, I think it was over 70 points against Monmouth.
And Kyle, I thought I was exaggerating when I said a 50. I thought I was exaggerating. You're telling me about 70?
So when you start to think about what this group of women did in the climate that they were dealing with, all the challenges and obstacles they faced, on top of attending and being at a financially challenged institution, for what those women did to us to come through a national tournament and make it to a national championship game is Hall of Fame worthy, is documentary worthy. Their story needs to be documented. It's important for young people, for seasoned people. People need to know about what these women have accomplished. So, it's important for us and people in the landscape to share that story. No other HBCU has done what these women have done, and they need to be celebrated and lauded for their achievements and accomplishments.
And in our final 5 minutes, we're going to hear a closing statement from Deb Walker. By the way, those who tuned in, you were listening to just now Kyle Adams, the Lady Wolves coach at Cheyney from 2011 to 2016, and he's a 1999 alumnus of Cheyney University. You're going to hear again right now from Deb Walker, a member of the 1982 Lady Wolves team and a 1982 graduate. She's also a 40th anniversary event official spokesperson. And I, thanks to Deb and Kyle, I'm the ball boy. They let me carry the bag to make sure that everybody got their equipment together. And I'm proud to be the ball boy for the team. Deb, I'm going to give you the final 5 minutes before we shut things down. I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Kyle. What do you want to share with the listening audience that you think they need to know about that great 1982 team and that 1970s, 1980s dynasty? The microphone is yours, Deb.
But first of all, I want to say, Mike, you're the coach. You're not the ball boy.
I love it.
You are the coach. We love and respect you. We appreciate you. And what I want everybody to know is that it takes a village to raise a family. And at Cheyney State, we were truly a family. And that started with the administrators from Dr. Wade Wilson.
Yes.
Who loved us dearly, who took care of us, the professors, who, although we may have been the talk of campus or the big kids on the block, they kept us humble. They kept us in our place. I can remember having a class with Dr. Berry, and that was my number one, my favorite professor on campus.
Yes.
And I'm in class one day, and I'm reading the paper, and he came and he tapped me. He said, "You might be a superstar in the court, but this is my classroom."
Woo!
I said, "I apologize, Dr. Berry." It didn't stop there. Because at practice at 3:00, he walked right to Coach Paul. He told Coach Stringer just what he felt. And we just laughed, but I knew that he had my back and he wanted the best for me. The student body of Cheyney, you cannot replace that. If there's a time in my life that I want to go back to, I want to go back to Cheyney. Because Cheyney made everything all right. No matter what, Cheyney made everything all right. And being on that basketball court made everything even so much better. And on the national landscape, I can remember an instance where Eddie Robinson, who was coaching at Grambling, had reached out to Coach Stringer about us. And he and Coach Stringer had a conversation about the role of the Black athlete in America, the role of Black women in America, not only at the HBCU, not only in college, but what role we played. And just that Cheyney pride, going back to the 82 game, when we got back home that following week, that following Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm not sure what day it was, but that week, we started getting fan mail. And it was so ridiculous that it scared us. Like, we haven't done anything but what we were supposed to do. And true story, got letters from inmates at the prison.
Wow.
Who said that we have made a difference in their lives just by being there. And what we need to do at Cheyney, we need to restore that historic legacy of women's basketball. It is so important to keep it going. It may be delayed right now, but delayed doesn't mean denied. We have to get back to where we were, and we can, because this moment here is just to get us to the future. So we can talk about 82 and how proud we are. We need to talk about 2028, 2035. What's going to be there? What are we doing to make it better? Because
please continue, please.
Just like we had Dr. Wade Wilson, who made sure we had everything, we can be that. We can be Wade Wilson in little pieces.
Yes.
I'm willing to give everything I have, because I'm going to retire next year or two, to Cheyney women's basketball, to Cheyney University, period, because Cheyney gave me so much. Lifelong friendship. I mean, 40 years later, I know most of my classmates still. We haven't had homecoming in years, but I promise you, my phone is filled with pretty much everyone's number. Facebook allows us to stay connected. And what are we doing if we don't leave that door open for the future? We cannot shut that door as far as Cheyney women's basketball. We can't shut that door.
Deb, you hit it on the head, and your presentation was so eloquent, which explains why you're the event official spokesperson. And you said something. I got to give Coach Kyle the final 30 seconds. The final 30 seconds, Coach. Deb started this. Let me ask you to wrap it up. What obligation does the university have now to do something about athletics?
Well, I think what you're seeing is, when you look at the landscape of what's going on with our schools, there are so many different families, businesses, people who are willing to invest in historically Black colleges and universities. And we sit at a unique and very important time that we can leverage this great history and tradition.
Yes.
And I think it's really important for our university community to really take our history and tradition and our heritage and really utilize it to help to propel the university forward. You know, I think when you look at what these women have done and when you share their story and journey, it's something that people want to connect to. People want to connect to winning and tradition and the value. Cheyney University is the only historically Black college to have 2 Naismith Hall of Famers. The only other school I can think of that may have 2 Naismith Hall of Famers as a women's and a men's basketball coaches are UConn with Gino Auriemma and Jen Calhoun. So when you start to talk about that and the coaches that have come through this institution, the players and the teams that have come through this institution, we have to leverage that to help secure who we are and what we're able to provide to students and families as we move forward.
Folks who are just listening, you heard some profound words from Coach Kyle Adams. You also heard from Deb Walker. For more information about this upcoming event, we're going to get flyers out and have them spread all over the nation. In the meantime, email me at michaelcoord@gmail.com. MichaelCoord, the letter X @gmail.com. Big shout out to Deb Walker. Big shout out to Kyle Adams. Big shout out to Leroy McCarthy, who's also instrumental in making this thing happen. I'll see you all next month. Thank you for tuning in.
Welcome to the It's Bigger Than the Ball podcast, hosted by my daddy, Coach Kyle Adams.
My name is Valerie Walker. I'm glad to be here doing this podcast. I'm from Atlantic City, New Jersey, and I went to Cheyney State. Of course, you guys know that. And I played small forward. I played the number 3.
Val was a 2-time All-American in 1981 and 82. Sandra?
Good evening. My name is Sandra Giddings. I'm from Yonkers, New York. And at Cheyney State, I played 2 positions. The number 1 point guard, and number 2 position, shooting guard.
Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you.
Faith?
Thank you for having me.
Okay, my name is Faith Wilds, but everyone always called me Faye, and I'm from Pittsburgh, PA. I played center, and I enjoyed it. I got my nose broke during that time, but I enjoyed playing. And I enjoy talking to my sisters right now.
So welcome, Faith. We also have Deborah Walker, who was on a call the other night. She's going to be our moderator tonight also. But thank you, Deb, for making sure that we got the rest of the ladies on tonight. Ladies, I'll start you off with the first question that I always ask on my podcast. We call it the brown sugar question. When did you fall in love with the game of basketball?
Hey, by the way, that's like one of my all-time favorite movies, Brown Sugar.
Everybody loves that movie.
I love that. Yeah. Well, for me, it's hard to say. I had 2 big brothers, right? And I used to kind of follow them around. I was living in Newark, New Jersey, and they would go to Clinton Place and play in the playground, and I would play with them. So it's like I always followed them when I can. And then, growing up, getting a little older in the summertime, I would be playing in Atlantic City and all the in the playgrounds and everything. And it was just something that I did every day. After school, basketball. In school, during lunch, basketball. During gym. So it's really hard for me to say exactly when I fell in love with it. It just seemed like it's always been a part of me growing up. It was always something that I did. Always something that I enjoyed. So I don't know. Maybe I was just born with the love for it,
How about you, Sandra?
Okay, my story is about the same with Val's. I had 2 older brothers who played basketball and introduced me to the game of basketball. They always took me to the parks with them. So I think I fell in love with the game when about 7 years old. And it's always been my passion. I can't do it now, but I still got the love for it.
How about you, Faith?
It was different for me. I grew up with a parent. My mother was a heroin addict, and me and my brother were left home a lot by ourselves, but we lived near a basketball court, a swimming pool, and we just always went there to play. And we both ended up on swimming teams, but my brother ended up boxing, and I ended up just playing basketball, volleyball. and swimming. That was my passion, and it helped me get away from what was going on in our household until my grandmother took us and raised us. So it was an escape, but it was a savior at the same time.
Okay. Now, when we had the other ladies on the call, we talked a great deal about just some of the other schools that were recruiting you all. You all were some of the top players in the country at the time. Can you share with our listeners, just so they have an idea of some of the other schools that were involved in your recruitment as you were coming out of high school?
Well, to be honest, I had letters from all over the country. But I knew I wasn't going to the West Coast, and I knew I wasn't going to the South. So I narrowed my schools down to the East Coast. And the school that I was really going to go to, who ended up being one of our enemies, was the University of Maryland. That's where I was going. And they ended up being our enemies. The girls could tell you, or the history. But I was Maryland. And I could say, maybe I can continue this on. I don't know if it's going to go into your next question, but I was going to the University of Maryland until the day that Coach Stringer and Coach Cheyney came to visit me. And they sat down with me. They sat down with my parents. And before they left, I said, I'm coming to play for you. I hadn't seen the school yet or anything. But after that conversation, I changed my mind just like that. And I don't want to go too far, but I had to put that with that college selection. So
we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
How about you, Sandra?
I've gotten letters as well from all over. And I didn't want to go too far either. To be honest, I was actually leaning towards UConn. But as like Val said, when it wasn't Coach Cheyney, it was Coach Stringer and Coach Schaefer that came to visit me, that came to see me play, and we sat down and we talked, and they talked to my parents as well. And I just liked the things that she was saying, how close the team was. Excuse me. It was like a family. So that determined my decision, and I went to Cheyney.
How about you, Faith? You're muted.
Okay. Mine was the same as Miss Stringer. She came to visit. I had offers from all over the country, and I didn't know where I wanted to go. Pitt was pushing up on me real strong because I had went to a lot of their camps, free camps and everything, and they wanted me to come there. And Miss Stringer came to my grandmother's house. She ate greens with us and sat down and talked and didn't put the basketball out there first. She just talked family, talked to us. And I knew that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to be close to my grandmother, but I just liked the way she presented herself. And that's what won me over.
Faith, what high school did you go to in Pittsburgh?
I went to Brashear High School. They closed this one school down Fifth Avenue. That's where I had got all city, and they closed it down and shipped us over to Brashear High School. John A. Brashear.
Okay. Yep, I'm familiar with Brashear.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, ladies, you talked about these different schools that were involved in your recruitment. Share some about what you knew about Cheyney. What was it about Cheyney? And Val alluded to it a little bit, and Sandra, you did also. But what was it about Cheyney that made you choose this small little HBCU over all these other schools who were recruiting you?
Well, like I said, when I was in high school, to be honest, I didn't know about Cheyney, right? But a coach named Winthrop McGriff, who coached at Cheyney after Coach Stringer, he coached at my high school, but he coached the boys. But he spoke to me and he told me about Coach Stringer and about Cheyney. And then I remember Coach Stringer coming to one of my games. And she introduced herself, and told me that, where she coached. And then Mr. McGriff took me to see Cheyney play Rutgers, of all schools, another enemy. Took me to see Cheyney play Rutgers. And they played at the Douglas. They have a small arena, a small court at the Douglas campus. And I watched Cheyney play for the first time. And, I'm like, wow, they're all sisters. And they put a hurting on Rutgers because, see, where I went to high school, I'm right there at Rutgers, Piscataway. So all I heard about was Rutgers, which they were good. And Cheyney beat them, But like I said, I was still going to Maryland. But when Coach Cheyney and Coach Stringer, they spoke to me. I mean, just her heart, her sincerity, you know, she was different, a lot different than any other coaches that I spoke to during the recruitment process. And she just convinced me. I felt that was the right move.
Ladies, I love you. Thank you.
You back. Thank you for this.
Yes.
It's
Y'all
good
be
to see
safe.
you.
Salute.
Okay, love y'all. I gotta go
love
check
y'all
on my
too.
mom.
Bye, Kyle.
Together.
Bye. Team together.
Together, okay.
Thank you for
listening to It's Bigger Than the Ball podcast, hosted by Coach Kyle Adams. Yo, Daddy, we out of here.